Hey, it's 9:10 here, Big 550 KTRS, and a quick story before we get to our next guest. Our next guest is William Cohen, who is formerly, he used to be a senator from Maine. He was defense secretary in the Clinton years. He was, of course, there when the bombing of Kosovo took place, and since he's left public life, he's become an author. And his wife is an author, and his wife was in town a few years ago because I think she had a play that was performing, a play she wrote was performing at the Black Rep, I believe, and so they were in town, and they were at the Fox Studios promoting her play, and he just happened to be along here with them. And I was walking through the Fox Studios, and I saw him, and I kind of geeked out a little bit, and I wanted to take a selfie with him, and he was gracious enough to take a selfie with him, and so walking by, I was like, all the day, I was like, hey, look at this picture I saw. And they were like, why did you bother this nice Secretary of Defense who wasn't bothering anybody? I said, because I wanted a selfie with him, and he couldn't have been any nicer. He is with us now to talk about his brand new book called Collision. Former Secretary of Defense William Cohen, welcome to Big 550 KTRS.
Well, it's great to be with you again.
Did you always want to write, or is it something you came about after all of your government work?
No, actually, I've been writing since my college days, and this represents my 14th book. I'm busy on the 15th, so it's been there for a long time. But I've been able to write the novels more frequently now that I'm no longer in public office. I do have a day job, which I'm not giving up, but writing has been with me for a long time. I've had six. This is my sixth novel. I have 6 nonfiction and 2 books of poetry.
So basically, you became Secretary of Defense so you could have material for your novels.
Well, I have drawn upon that material. I only write what I know. I don't take a lot of time to do research, and so it's a bit easier for me. But on this particular one, Collision, I did talk with a number of astrophysicists. I did talk with experts at NASA in order to make sure that I wasn't going off too far in the deep end. But I wanted to deal with a subject matter which is very much on the minds of certainly NASA, members of Congress as well, as we come to realize that we are in a cosmic shooting gallery, and there are millions of asteroids in our universe, and some of them pose real threats, given the size, and some of them pose extinction threats. And so about 2 years ago, this came to mind. There was a small asteroid, about 56 feet in diameter. It weighed 7,000 tons and came at Earth at 40,000 miles an hour. And it had the impact of 30 times the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. So that was a small one. The same day, which got very little attention, there was another asteroid that came reasonably close. It was 98 feet, weighed 40,000 tons. And so they're out there, and many of them we can see and need to see, but we have to have assets in space and ground-based as well that can see them coming. If you can't see it coming, you can't deflect it. And so many books have been written about it. Movies have been made about asteroids coming at Earth. Bruce Willis starred in one, Armageddon.
Right.
And I think there's deep impact in others. But what's taking place today, and we've been reminded of it, most recently we've landed a little satellite on a comet. But what's happening is President Obama had made it one of his objectives by 2025, which is just 10 years from now, to actually move an asteroid into an orbit in which we could either land a robot or an astronaut to take samples from that asteroid back to Earth. And the private sector is now heavily involved in this, trying to consider how they can move asteroids into a sublunar orbit so that the asteroids can be mined for titanium, palladium, other types of very valuable minerals. So the question is, who's regulating this activity? And the answer is no one, because the Outer Space Treaty only regulates the use of space for military purposes, and it prohibits that. but there's no regulation or no oversight in terms of what's going on at a commercial level. So I think it raises an issue, and I raise this in a way saying, what happens if unexpectedly you move an asteroid into an orbit which on its next circuit or 2 or 3 from now will come directly in the path of Earth? And as I say, if we can see it, we can deflect it or defeat it. If you can't see it, then it could be lights out.
So that's hence the political thriller from there is you get it into orbit, and then who owns it, and political intrigue and murder and mayhem and everything else.
I tried to make it entertaining as well as informative.
It sounds like a fictional account, or it sounds like Tuesday in Washington.
Well, there's a lot of chaos in Washington, to be sure, and but what I try and do, I've written 6 novels now. The novel before this was called Blink of an Eye, and reporters used to ask me what kept me awake at night, and I would respond by saying a nuclear bomb destroying an American city. Now, obviously, I couldn't write that while I was at the Pentagon, but it's something that has continued to weigh heavily on me as we see the proliferation of nuclear weapons capability to additional countries. Now we're debating the issue of Iran. Should Iran have a weapons capability or be on the brink of having a weapons capability? And if they do, would the Saudis follow suit, and would the Egyptians follow suit? And so would more and more countries go back to proliferating, gaining access to this material? And what does that mean in a world in which ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other extremist groups could have access to it? So I wanted to draw attention to that, and so I had the city of Savannah, Georgia, destroyed by a nuclear weapon, and then the president has to decide who could have done this, why would they do it, how did they do it, and what do we do about it? And those are the dangers that are involved when you start to see a proliferation of nuclear material. So that was Blink of an Eye, but this is different in the sense that we are in this shooting gallery, and we have to be prepared for it. An asteroid might not come at us for 1,000 years, but it could be tomorrow. And so if it's tomorrow, we've got a problem. If it's 10 years from now, we've got chances to devise means to move it in a way that wouldn't hit the Earth.
William Cohen, our guest, former Secretary of Defense, his newest book is called Collision. It is a fiction. It is a novel. It's not real. It's a novel. Did they ever come to you and say, that's a little too close to home, you're going to have to change some of that?
No, not at all. In fact, this is all based on information in the public domain. And again, I was able to talk to the administrator of NASA. He put me in touch with 2 of his very prominent astrophysicists, and I made sure that as best I could, staying in the realm of fiction, that science was close to being right.
Yeah.
And so this is not science fiction. The fiction comes in terms of the story surrounding it.
Yeah. One quick question while we have you. Over the weekend, President Obama announced that he's sending troops to Iraq to sort of combat ISIS. As former Secretary of Defense, what are your thoughts on that news?
Well, it's probably too little too late to have a significant impact. I think what he's trying to do now is to contain ISIS as best we can. I think the notion that we're going to be able to defeat ISIS under this current plan is not realistic. I think it can be contained, and we can be much more effective in our air campaign by having a few more special forces and other types on the ground helping to direct those attacks coming from the air and helping to train some of the forces on the ground. But ultimately, nothing is going to work as long as the Sunnis, the Sunni tribe leaders, do not feel that they have a role in the government of Iraq. And so until such time as that takes place, you're going to have Sunni tribal leaders who don't particularly like ISIS, but they'll go with ISIS before they'll support a purely Shia regime in Iraq. So it's going to. We're in a holding pattern here. This is not something that's going to turn the tide, in my judgment.
That's William Cohen, former Secretary of Defense. Wish we had more time. Also, a former senator from Maine. His new book is Collision, and it's a page turner. Thank you, sir, for your time, and good luck down the road.
Thanks. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Always a pleasure.
And Janet sends her regards. The play is still going.
All right, thank you very much. There you go.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. There you go. The play at good. There you go. 9:20 here. We're going to come back.